Hi, I'm Rob Fusey, and today I'm here with my buddy Todd in his 1987 Porsche 911 Turbo. Some say it's the most iconic car in the world, and today we're going to learn a little bit more about Todd's car and figure out why. So let's get to know the car a little bit. Todd, what can you tell us about it?
So it's a 1987 911 Turbo.
Also known as the 930.
Yes, it's a 930. I've owned it for about 8 years. It's got 66,000 miles and change on it. It's been a blast ever since I've owned it. It's like a dream car for me. All right, so the car is rear engine, coupe, 2+2 layout. You know, really the design of it goes back to the mid-60s when Porsche was really capitalizing on the success of the 356 that they had. They were really looking to take that to the next level with the 911. Designed this in 1964 and all the way up until really 1989, and this look of the car, it really didn't change much. It was a bit of like incremental evolution. They were constantly improving the car, but it was never anything really transformational.
So Todd, you're just talking about the shape of the 911. Now the Turbo specifically makes a very profound and impactful impression through its styling alone. Could you walk us through some of those elements?
Yeah, sure. So like I was saying, you know, between 64 and 89, it was just incremental evolution. But throughout that time period, the car did get bigger, it got wider. So the perfect example of how the 911 continued to grow are the rear fenders. You know, as the power went up in the cars, they needed wider tires to be able to accommodate that power, and you needed the wider fenders to be able to accommodate those tires. The original 911s had what they called 7-inch flares in the back. An equal vintage to this car of a regular Carrera were 9-inch flares, and the Turbos had 11s. And the fronts weren't left out either. They went from 7-inch to 9-inch flares to really give the car that muscular look.
So Todd, one of the most standout and legendary features of the Turbos have to be these whale tails. Did 911s always have tails?
No, they didn't. They didn't have them until the 70s when they first came out with the ducktails. And then when the first Turbos came out, that's where the iconic whale tail came from. And then into the 80s, the Carreras got the Carrera tails. And then the final incarnation of the Turbo tails, this one here on the intercooled cars.
All right, Todd, let's talk wheels and brakes. What do we have here?
Yeah, so we've got big 4-piston Brembo brakes, cross-drilled rotors, and the Fuchs wheels, 7-inch in the front.
It's a long U.
Long
right?
U, don't do the short U.
Okay,
yeah.
Fuchs wheels.
7 inches in the front, 9 inches in the back.
All right, so that brings us to the front of the car. Todd, can you talk to us about our storage opportunities up here?
Yeah, sure. So with the motor being in the back, this is our only storage opportunity. We've got the battery, the spare tire, and a little bit of luggage.
But do you think you could fit a body up here, Todd?
No personal experience, but I bet you could.
Okay, only one way to find out. Now we're at one of the most important parts of the car, the engine bay. And you can see the engine's in the rear of the car, and some would say this is the worst possible place you could put the engine, especially with a lot of the weight hanging over the wrong side of that rear axle. Why do you think Porsche did this, Todd?
Yeah, I think it's an evolution from the Beetle, which Porsche was involved in designing, the Volkswagen Beetle, and where they were really focused on compactness and cost and simplicity. And I think Porsche learned a lot with that design and just went with it in his car as well. And some would say they spent the last 40 or 50 years trying to improve upon that original design flaw.
And just make it work.
Yeah.
So now you're looking at the heart of the beast. Todd, can you walk us through this and throw some stats at us?
Sure, yeah, so we're looking at a 3.3 liter flat 6 engine here, intercooler, single turbocharger, 282 horsepower in the US. We're looking at the air conditioning compressor. This is the fan. These are air-cooled motors, so there isn't a radiator up front. This is the cooling mechanism for the car.
So this is doing the brunt of the work.
This is doing the brunt of the work. Some people would say they're oil-cooled because there's about 10 or 11 quarts of oil in there too, which keeps the motor cool as well.
So the air conditioner compressor right here?
Right.
So does this function, or is this more ornamental?
Well, some would say it's more ornamental. It's in there, but does it actually blow cold air? 911s were never really known for their air conditioning capabilities.
All right, Todd, we finally made it inside the turbo. So are you willing to do an exercise with me?
Yes.
Put your hands on the wheel.
Okay.
3 and 9. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. Now describe the smells that have been marinating inside this time capsule for the past 30 years.
Oh my gosh.
First thing that comes to mind.
I smell the leather, oil, gas. I don't know. It's definitely a distinct smell in this car.
All right, I want you to simulate the sounds that the 911 makes from startup through acceleration.
Oh, you didn't warn me about this one. All right. A little. And then. And then when we get off the throttle, you get the little burble. That off-throttle burble that it's got, which is one of my favorite parts of it. I don't know, I'm terrible at making the sound.
All right, Todd, let's talk about the transmission.
Yes, we've got a 4-speed transmission here, which is kind of unusual. They say that it comes from the racing heritage. It's what they put in the 934s and the 935s that these cars basically were homologated for.
Okay. Does it feel like 4 speeds is enough speeds?
You know what? To me, that's the character of the car. So it's all I know, and I think it's great. They did put a 5-speed in it in 1989, which is kind of a desirable thing because everyone's like, oh, it should have had a 5-speed all along. I'm great with the 4.
There's something unique about the pedals in these 911s. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, it's kind of unusual that the 911s, the pedals are hinged from below rather than kind of hanging down from the firewall or from the dash up above.
Does that give it a very different feel?
It really does. I mean, especially driving a manual transmission and working the clutch, you get used to it, but it is a unique feeling the first time you drive it.
Here we have a climate control system that is very German, to say the least. Todd, how do you work this system? I see multiple levers, no words,
Yeah,
symbols.
So my strategy is just drive it in nice weather with the windows down. But if you need any of this stuff, I'm thinking that the top knobs control how much fan, the speeds of the fan. The other knobs are kind of like, do you want to defrost the windshield or heat your feet?
And in fact, my 77 911 had a decoding map on the inside of the glove compartment, but they figure that the turbo users are sophisticated enough that they don't need that, it appears. And right below the shifter, we have the air conditioning console. And you can see it definitely shows that this was an afterthought or an add-on to this model. The fact that the controls are down at the bottom instead of integrated into the rest of the system.
And here we have the third climate control location in the car that opens up the heat exchangers.
So Todd, one other quirk about the 911s is the position of the sunroof switch. Where is that switch?
Right here.
All right, how long does it take most people to find that switch, do you think?
It took me a while. As you can see, there's a number of switches under there that are just not labeled.
So it's kind of like being James Bond, where you have the secret switch there.
Yeah.
Not sure if it's going to open the sunroof or inject the passenger.
Yeah, exactly.
And of course, we have the famous 911 5-gauge layout. Todd, can you talk us through what each of these gauges does?
So here we've got fuel level. We also have oil level, which is kind of nice. Moves the dipstick right inside the car. We've got oil temperature, oil pressure. We've got the tachometer, and something unique to the turbos is you do have a boost gauge. And you can see how important that Porsche thinks that the tachometer is for the driver's visualization, that it's front and center there. And then moving on, we've got the speedometer with the odometer on it. And then we've got the clock.
One thing I love about these old 911s, if you listen very carefully, you can actually hear the clock ticking. All right, so let's drive this thing. All right, so this car is almost 100% stock, correct?
Yeah. It is 100% stock.
Have you ever considered modifying it?
No. You know, these cars are very modifiable. They, you can easily get them up to 300, 400, 500 horsepower. I kind of like mine just the way the good doctor intended it.
And there probably aren't too many stock survivors out there because of that temptation for easy power boost.
effect. Off throttle, like if you lift in a turn, if you hit the brakes in a turn, it can throw off the whole geometry of the car or the whole weight balance of the car, and it can turn around on you pretty quickly. And with all that power and an inexperienced driver, yeah, you can definitely get yourself in trouble fast.
All right, finish this sentence.
Okay.
When I hit the brakes on the 911, it feels like
Stopping a train.
the hand of God is
it's
coming
just
down.
like instant effect.
Last covered bridge in New Jersey, by the way.
Really? Here it is. We're going through
Yep.
it.
A piece of history, going through a piece of history.
Right.
So what would ever make you consider selling this car?
The only thing that would make me consider selling this car is the fact that I do believe in life as being too short of driving the same car for too long. There's just too many good cars out there to drive.
All right, Todd. We'll do an acceleration run here, and I want you to describe what you're feeling as we're accelerating.
When we hit 3,000 RPM, it gets a little more interesting.
Yeah, it's like nothing that.
It's kind of like light speed or something like that in Star Wars, I guess.
Yeah. All right, Todd. If you could relate the transmission to an animal, which animal would it be?
It's slow and then it winds up. So the first thing that popped in my mind is like the Tasmanian devil. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you know what I mean? Maybe that's more the engine and the turbo than the transmission, but that's the driving experience.
So this car has a lot of idiosyncrasies. Which do you think is the honest?
You know, for me, it's got to be the engine in the back. You know, I remember the first time that I drove a 911, and you start it up, and you're like, well, the noise isn't supposed to be back there; it's supposed to be up there. You know, so that's a different kind of auditory or audible experience, and then driving it and feeling the rear wheel drive and the weight in the back. It's all part of the uniqueness of the experience.
And the turbo lag, it's probably one of the most annoying things to some people, but it's also got to be one of the most fun things.
Yes. Yeah.
Where it's like that surge in your mouth.
No question about it. It's definitely an exciting thing, and you can really have fun with passengers who don't know the car. And you know, it's like nothing. You know, instant thrust, and then you just light their hair on fire when you get it over 5,000 RPM. It's a lot of fun.
So in the beginning, we talked about the 911 Turbo being the most iconic car in the world. So what do you think makes it so iconic? Now, to me, it's the unmistakable, distinctive styling. It has to be the most recognizable car out there on the road. Like, before anything else, that's it. I would say the reputation, the sounds, the smells, the feel of the car, all very unique. The whale tail.
The look of it, for sure. The history. I mean, the fact that, you know, we talk about the turbo lag and some of those idiosyncrasies. I mean, this was the first sports car with a turbocharger, right? I mean, it was ahead of its time. It was the second production car to have a turbocharger in general. So, and that's all part of it. It's it's not only the look, but the performance and the history and the fact that it's just like instantly recognizable. Yeah, so we've got big four-piston Brimbos. Yeah, so we've got big four-piston Bimbo brakes. That could go in the outtakes.
Yeah, one bimbo on each corner. So we have 4 bimbos total.
Fantastic, yes. These cars in the 80s had plenty of bimbos around them.
Yeah.